8. Pretty fucking melodramatic, right? The world has seen 1 or 2 better stories, I know that. 1 or 200,000 better ones, more like it. It ought to have, "This is a product of an undergraduate creative writing workshop," stamped on every page. Because that's just what it was, at least up to a certain point. It seems both painfully derivative and painfully sophomoric to me now. Style by Hemingway, except we've got the whole thing in the present tense for some reason, how too fucking trendy. Theme by Faulkner. Could anything be more serious, more literary? But even its pretensions can't hide the fact that it's an extremely sexual story written by an extremely inexperienced young man. At the time I wrote Stud City, I had been to bed with 2 girls and had ejaculated prematurely all over one of them. Not much like Chico in the foregoing tale, I guess. Its attitude toward women goes beyond hostility and to a point which verges on actual ugliness. 2 of the women in Stud City are sluts, and the 3rd is a simple receptacle who says things like, "I love you, Chico," and "Come in, I'll give you cookies." Chico, on the other hand, is a macho, cigarette-smoking, working-class hero who could have stepped whole and breathing from the grooves of a Bruce Springsteen record, although Springsteen was yet to be heard from when I published the story in the college literary magazine, where it ran between a poem called Images of Me and an essay on student parietals written entirely in lower case. It is the work of a young man every bit as insecure as he was inexperienced. And yet it was the first story I ever wrote that felt like my story. The first one that felt really whole, after 5 years of trying. The first one that might still be able to stand up even with its props taken away. Ugly, but alive. Even now when I read it, stifling a smile at its pseudo-toughness and its pretensions, I can still see the true face of Gordon LaChance, lurking just behind the lines of print. A Gordon LaChance younger than the one living and writing now, one certainly more idealistic than the best-selling novelist who is more apt to have his paperback contracts reviewed than his books, but not so young as the one who went with his friends that day to see the body of a dead kid named Ray Brower. A Gordon LaChance halfway along in the process of losing the shine. No, it's not a very good story. Its author was too busy listening to other voices to listen as closely as he should have to the one coming from inside. But it was the first time I had ever really used the place I knew and the things I felt in a piece of fiction. And there was a kind of dreadful exhilaration in seeing things that had troubled me for years come out in a new form, a form over which I had imposed control. It had been years since that childhood idea of Denny being in the closet of his spookily preserved room had occurred to me. I would have honestly believed I had forgotten it. Yet there it is in Stud City, only slightly changed, but controlled. I've resisted the urge to change it a lot more, to rewrite it, to juice it up. And that urge was fairly strong because I find the story quite embarrassing now. But there are still things in it I like. Things that would be cheapened by changes made by this later LaChance, who has the first threads of gray in his hair. Things like that image of the shadows on Johnny's white T-shirt or that of the rain ripples on Jane's naked body that seem better than they have any right to be. Also, it was the first story I never showed to my mother and father. There was too much Denny in it, too much Castle Rock, and most of all, too much 1960. You always know the truth, because when you cut yourself or someone else with it, there's always a bloody show.